Hey everybody, I'm Christoph. I'm a filmmaker and a content creator, and I've been using 360 cameras for about 5 years now, mostly in kind of the experimental space, a lot of stuff on social media, just kind of playing around with stuff that you can't do with traditional cameras. And that's one of the reasons that I get really excited about Insta360 cameras. Today we're going to kind of start with some very basic stuff of how the camera works. I'm going to assume that some people here have never even seen a 360 camera before, and then we'll kind of move along into some more advanced techniques. One of the techniques that I find the most useful when it comes to creating sort of these mind-bending visuals is the use of, well, first of all, understanding what the footage looks like when you get it off the camera and understanding kind of what that footage looks like, and then using that and creating masks to kind of create these alternate realities and mind-bending realities. So that's kind of what we're going to talk about today. And I'm going to live edit something that I shot here last night to kind of show the use of masks with 360 footage, and it'll hopefully also help you understand kind of what the footage looks like when you take it off the camera. Because for a lot of people, it's a little confusing the first time you open that footage up and understanding what it is. Okay, so today let's start with the camera itself. So for people who haven't seen a 360 camera before, it's got two lenses on it, and both lenses can see more than 180 degrees. And what that means is essentially if you can see, if you turn the camera in any direction, you can always see a lens. And if you can see the lens, then the camera can see you. And this is actually really innovative technology in this package because, I don't know, for some of you, maybe you can remember 15 years ago, we used to use these things called VR rigs. And you'd have to put a DSLR camera on it and pivot it around on axis and take a whole bunch of captures in different directions and up and down, and then you have to use special like GUI software to stitch it all together, and then you just get an image out of that, and it takes like an hour to do. These cameras do all of that work for you and then some and more, and they do video, and the camera itself does it. So I really appreciate how much technology is packed into these cameras just because I've had to do the workflow before. And so what happens is you set your camera down, and then what you get is this image that looks something like this. And essentially, if you're looking at this image, the left side of the frame and the right side of the frame are kind of a continuation of each other. So as we play this clip along, you'll see that I'm coming here on the side here, kind of skip ahead. And at the bottom, you can see the three legs of the tripod. So all of the information is there. On the top, you have all of the ceiling structure. So that was what we're looking for. So if we go back a little bit, you'll see when I kind of cross from one side to the other, as I'm walking through here, on one side, I'm coming out the other. So the camera this is called an equirectangular image, and the camera is basically showing us all of the pixels that we captured when we did this thing. And this is going to become important when we start to do our masks. But it's important to have an understanding of what this image is first. And I do have a couple examples of those just to show you, and I can kind of quickly walk you through the differences of this. So this is one that I did using the underwater housing, and this is the equirectangular image again. And in this case, I used what's called the rotoscope tool in After Effects, it works the same way as a mask does, but it actually kind of does a better job of like doing a fine-tuned mask around a particular thing. So this is me doing some free diving with a cool touristy vest on underwater. And then I was able to duplicate this version of myself and create all of these different clones underwater. And the way that this will kind of play out when you add some camera movement to it is you get something like this. So you can add some camera movement, and each time it's moving around, you're still seeing some remnants of the previous character. And then with Insta360 footage, because it's 360, you can kind of start to do all kinds of really weird and wacky things with it. So it's the same concept as what we did with this booth here. We're just playing around a little bit more with how the camera moves, and that's the kind of part that starts to trip people out a little bit. But it's using the same kind of basic idea. And if I wasn't overlapping myself, I could have done this with masks as well, but I wanted to have a few more versions of me in there, so that's why I did the rotoscope instead. So that's a version. This is another one that I did. Let me see, where is it? The one that we saw from the beginning, this was the same kind of thing where I used the Insta360 sphere, which is their drone mount, to do this shot. So the camera's actually mounted to a drone, and then I again use masks to essentially draw lines around and create this upside down universe, which also, let me just set this out point here, which also allows me to make this perfect loop. So as the camera tilts up again, we kind of go back to where we started, and then it swings down, and it plays over and over again, and you can't really find the cut. And this is something you wouldn't be able to do with a regular drone. You really do need to have a 360 camera to pull something like this off. And I can quickly show you how we did that too. I have a bit of a... So for this one, I did the same thing where I used masks. It's hard to tell here, but you can kind of see... you can see like the little outlines of the mask here that I used, and I basically drew masks around all the tops of the buildings, and then I animated it so I could remove the sky. And this is just kind of showing how it moves. And then once I have that duplicate image, I can create another version, just swing it upside down. And now I have this like alternate universe, and it looks really weird and wacky in this rectilinear view, but once you import it into the 360 software, you can start to just zoom around and play around with it just like you would. It's just that instead of the sky, you have this other set of buildings in this alternate universe where the two Earths are kind of colliding with each other. But it's the same concept, and actually I would say this concept is even more simple, even though it looks a lot crazier. This concept with the buildings, it's okay, is actually easier as long as you're down to put in the work of kind of just animating the movement of tracing around the buildings. It took a couple of hours, but I think the result is a really impressive look. And then there's other ways that you can use masks, and this is another one from the beginning, where I masked out the inside of the eye on this sign so that I could make another perfect loop. And then I animated the movement of the camera rotating to kind of create this endless loop of this Hamilton sign, which is the city where I'm from. And it's the same process with masks, where we took the camera and we started inside the eye, we pulled back, and this movement I only had to do once, even though it feels like it's happening over and over again. And then once you put the computer on the software, the footage on the software, you just mask it in After Effects or in Premiere, it doesn't matter. And I'm just masking these like 6 points inside this eye and animating it over a few different frames. And then I import it into Premiere, and I just layer them all up so that essentially behind each eye, so when you take away that footage, behind each eye is another layer. And that's how you get this version where they're all kind of inside there. And then again, it's a very simple concept, but it's something that you wouldn't be able to do. You can do this without a 360 camera, but the fact that I was able to add this rotating movement to it is something I wouldn't have been able to do with a traditional camera and be able to dial in that movement so perfectly. So yeah, that's essentially taking a very simple idea with 360 cameras and turning it into something that is potentially a lot more complex. And I don't even know if there's a way to do that without something like this, and that's kind of one of the reasons why I love these cameras so much. So yeah, that's I think that's all I got. Do you want to do like a Q&A, Mike, or? Yeah, okay. Let's open it up if anybody has any questions. Is there like a microphone that people could use? Okay, cool. All right, we're gonna do a Q&A with Jon first. Unless anybody wants to shout out a question right now while we're waiting for him to get here. Does anybody have any questions about any of that stuff? Small free cameras? It's all good, that works too. It does, yeah. I am not a Final Cut Pro editor, but I share a studio with somebody who's coming on next who is a Final Cut Pro editor, and I think he'll be doing a little bit more of a walkthrough in that realm. And I do believe that their plugins work with Final Cut Pro as well, the 360 plugins. So, but yeah, I haven't used Final Cut since 7, so it's hard to say. I've never actually dabbled it with that, but yeah.
Christoph, hello.
Hey.
I'm going to be doing the Q&A emceeing with you.
All right, sounds good.
So first off, let's just give a hand to Christoph Benfey. We're both here from Canada. It's been a long way to see you guys, and it's cool to be able to share some of our 360 tips and techniques with you guys. We've been doing this a long time.
Yeah, 5 years now, I think. Yeah, with 360 cameras. Yeah.
So I didn't catch the beginning of your workshop, but I mean, personally, I don't even think if I know this, and I think a lot of people might be interested. How did you get into 360? Like, what was that aha moment that made you think that these tools are something different?
The first introduction I had to VR, we'll call it, because that's what it was called when I first was playing with it, was I got hired to do these like 3D or 360 tours of hotel rooms, and this was back in like 2008. And again, I had this rig that you would hook up like a 5D with a fisheye lens on it, and it would pivot the camera in 360. And you'd have to kind of like balance it so that the sensor was perfectly centered the whole time. So you need a special rig. It costs like $1,500, and then you'd have to take like a dozen photos in a circle, up and down, and then import it into special software, and it would spit out an image when it was all said and done. And the first time I saw one of these cameras, it kind of just blew my mind how simple it made the whole process. So I think I wasn't even really thinking about all these like cool ideas I could do with it yet. I was just like, oh, nice! It's like a simpler way to pull off the same concept. And then from there, once I started to understand how the footage worked, was when I started to kind of get more ideas for what you could do with it. The first thing I did with the 360 camera was actually made a music video that had Snorri Cam that edited because of the way 360 cameras edited the selfie stick. It felt like this POV shot, but you couldn't see the rig, and it was just following this character around through a party. And then from there, it was just like all these ideas started to flood in of cool things that you can do with the cameras.
Nice. Well, I think when a lot of people see 360, they can get a little bit overwhelmed because they see things that you and I or Cash Money can do, and they think, I don't think I can ever do that. But I don't think people understand how easy it is to do cool stuff in 360.
Yeah.
So if people were to walk away with something to try, what would be your number one recommendation? Maybe they have no experience or a little bit. What should they try to sort of get their feet wet in the world of 360?
First of all, just kind of playing around with the footage in Insta360 Studio, and you can set keyframes, and you can do a lot of the stuff that we did with animating camera movement just without the masking component. And I think that's pretty cool in and of itself, because you can do something like motorcycle footage, where you have the POV of the motorcycle, and then it pans over to the car beside you, and you can kind of get all these different camera angles after the fact, which I think is a really cool feature of 360 and probably the best feature of 360. And then if you want to kind of dabble more and getting to a little more experimental, I think masking, which is the thing that we talked about today, is a cool way to kind of take it to another level.
Nice. Do you have a favorite video you've ever created in 360?
The one of the buildings that we kind of showed at the beginning, this one was really fun, because it kind of, I came up with the idea for it, but I didn't even know if it would actually be possible. And then when I actually started to kind of mess around with it, and I realized how easy the 360 footage made it to execute, it only actually took a couple hours when it was all said and done. Once I kind of wrapped my head around what I was trying to do. But when you look at the clip, it feels like this thing that would have taken VFX artists or Christopher Nolan team like weeks to execute, and you can do it in a day, really.
So Christoph, I gotta ask you one more thing. Did you talk about perfect loops at all?
We did do a perfect loop in this one. We had the way the clip ended, it started the same way. And that's something that when Instagram first introduced video, that was a feature that I thought was so cool, because you could make these videos where you could hide a cut somewhere and kind of trick people into thinking it was a perfect loop. And I've kind of, even though now Instagram kind of stops the video at the end and asks if you want to play it again for some reason. I'm not really sure why they added that feature, but it kind of is a bummer. But like perfect loop is something that's really important to me, because it's fun to try and find a way to hide a cut and make a clip feel like it goes on forever.
Yeah, I mean, it does trick the audience to watch it again and again and again.
Yeah.
There's no start and end point. It sort of creates this like fluid, infinite motion. This is a great example of that, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and people will often comment and say like, I kind of got sucked in and I've been watching this for 15 minutes and it's a 30-second clip, so it's kind of fun when that happens. Yeah.
Nice. Well, we're going to open up to a few audience questions. So if anyone has a question, if you could just walk up to the front here, I'll pass you the mic. So any questions at all for Christoph?
There are no bad questions. Yeah.
He was asking if it's waterproof.
Yeah, is the X3 waterproof? This X3 is waterproof, I think up to a certain depth, but it won't stitch the footage properly because of the way, there's refraction with water, so it changes the way that the camera optically takes the image. But the cool thing is they released, and one of my favorite products that they came out with recently is the underwater dive case, because it actually optically corrects the image so that it does stitch properly underwater. And to me, it's like it created this whole new sport that I didn't even realize I would be into. But I started freediving when that came out, and I've just enjoyed. It's like the most fun thing because you can, swing the camera back on yourself, and then if you see a sea turtle, you can kind of rotate over to the sea turtle, and it's just like having a 360 camera but underwater wasn't possible until the dive case came out. And so that's like my favorite product that they've come out with recently.
Yeah, I'd say these things are surprisingly waterproof because I've like chucked them into water from cliffs.
Yeah.
Just
And surprisingly durable. Like this one has scratches all over it, and somehow I've never managed to scratch the lenses. But I do recommend getting the lens protectors for it because it's a lot easier to replace those than the lenses.
We have time for a couple more questions. So if anyone has a question for Christoph.
What's your nighttime song?
For nighttime, it depends on what I'm doing. I recently did a day to night time lapse, and a lot of times when you're doing something like that, you have no choice but to just put it in auto. Because it's so you can set your your exposure levels like if you want like -1 or 0 or +1. But I'm always blown away when I put these cameras in auto how good of a job they do actually capturing. The thing that we did last night, where I captured it here, was all fully auto. And I am a cinematographer and I work in the film industry, and I do like to have control over things when I can. But I find most of the time the camera does a good job of like picking the optimal settings for that. It's only when I want to get specific with shutter speed or something like that that I would go in and change the settings. But I do shoot in log on these cameras so that I have a little more flexibility in post with color. Yeah.
If I could just add something to that real quick, don't be afraid to shoot at like a crazy high ISO. And then there are so many amazing deep noise plugins right now that are cheap for like a small plugin. Like Topaz is amazing, Neat Video is amazing, Resolve's amazing. They can all denoise footage that like looks unusable. You can get it back to something that looks amazing. Yeah. So one more question. Anyone here? If not, I got a question. So, Christoph, if there was like a dream 360 shot you could get, what would it be?
Dream 360 shot. I'm really bad at coming up with ideas with notes out of thin air. I usually get inspired by looking at things that other people create. But a dream shot.
Why don't I pivot that then? If people want to find 360 inspiration, what kind of mindset should they be in? Where should they go for?
I think some of the other presenters that came here today, I would say like Cash Bunny is a huge inspiration to me and a lot of the people that are here because she does really mind-bending stuff as well. And so I think following other creators that Insta360 on their channel, they're really good at sharing content that people are making with the cameras that inspire them. And so I'd say if you're following them on Instagram and you're seeing cool stuff that people are posting there, follow those creators as well because that's usually where I get inspirations from other creators that are doing interesting things.
Yeah, I mean, one thing too that's a bit surprising where I can sometimes get inspiration is checking out some of the AI effects in the shot lab on the app.
Yeah.
Because you can see what all the crazy things the camera can do. And then like you and I can do them in our own way.
Yeah.
Right? But to like test it out with the AI, which does it all for you, it makes some shots like this happen without any user input. You just have to film something and then it can make crazy stuff happen. So if you're using the app, just click on stories on the bottom. There's like 30 plus AI tools that will make your footage look absolutely insane. So that's a really good place to start. So it'll make you look like you know what you're doing when you're in the know.
And I think that's one thing that Insta360 does really well is take technology and ideas that are really abstract or that you need a lot of like training or professional software to use, and they kind of distill it down into something that's very consumer friendly. So, with the camera in and of itself, I think now we consider 360 to be, all over the place, and we don't really or appreciate how much of a favor this camera is doing for us. And I think the AI thing too is something that, a lot of people are starting to dabble in that, but you need to understand how to use Discord or other, kind of third-party software just to get it to work. Whereas right in the app, you have all these features and it's right at your fingertips, and they make it very easy to understand and to use. And I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, like me and Christoph have both, like, you're a commercial DP. I've been doing a lot of DPing myself, like cinematography, and it's really cool to play with something that's like a $500 tool that anyone can use to really expand your creativity. Like, it doesn't have to be $100,000 rig.